Hello, everyone. I hope that you're doing amazing wherever you are in the world. My name is Shikha, and I welcome you to my channel. As always, I'm so grateful that you're listening, subscribing, and commenting. I really appreciate the support. In this one, I want to speak to you about trauma. And I've recently been reading some books on it and, talking to some psychologists about it because I've been really interested to know, what is trauma all about and how long does it last in the body and how do you reduce it or ease it? How do you get rid of it? And one of the videos that I've done previously about it is related to TRE, which is the tension and trauma releasing exercise, which I am a big proponent of. If you haven't watched my videos on TRE, go watch those, because if you have childhood trauma or if you have trauma of any kind, really, this is such a great way of at least removing the remnants of it, or partly the remnants of it, from your body so it doesn't affect you as much anymore. But as I said, I was listening to or watching something by a psychologist, and she said something that was really interesting to me. And she said that trauma obviously happens at certain points in your life. So it happens when you were 7 or when you were 20 or when you were 28, whatever that particular age that it happens. It was like a particular incident or a long-term incident. Some people have been through trauma that goes on for years and years and years, whatever that might be. So you go through that trauma and then it doesn't happen anymore. Physically, it's not there anymore. Like the physical actual incident doesn't take place anymore. And so you go on to the future. And so perhaps, for example, if it happened to you when you were 28 and now you are 35, the trauma happened in your past. It happened at some point in the past. Unless it's actually happening to you right now. But I'm speaking about trauma that's happened to you already. So let's keep it to this. So if the trauma's already happened to you and it's in your past and you're sitting here right now, whatever age you might be, you might be imagining in your mind that you are going through the trauma right now, that the trauma is in you right now, that the trauma is taking place right now within you, within your body, within your mind. But in actuality, the trauma has already happened. It's already done. It's over with. It happened. It might have left remnants on your body and your mind, but the trauma itself is in the past. It's over and done with. What we do to ourselves as human beings is that we repeat the trauma by thinking about it over and over again, replaying it in our minds, and thus keeping it fresh. So the trauma itself is not something that happens over and over again. We are the ones who recreate it over and over again by imagining it, by thinking about it, by dreaming about it, by imagining that it's happening over and over again. So, for example, if you have a physical reaction to thinking about that particular trauma, maybe your heart starts beating very fast because you get afraid, or maybe you start sweating, or maybe you start going into a panic, whatever it might be, right? You might start getting anxiety. That trauma is not actually happening right now. You're not sitting there experiencing that rape that you went through, or you're not sitting there experiencing that abuse that you went through, or you're not sitting there experiencing that particular incident, whatever it might be, right? But because you're actually just sitting in your room right now, if that's the case, or you're sitting in a subway station, or wherever you might be sitting, you're sitting in a particular spot. Nothing's actually really happening physically, but in your mind, you've recreated it because somehow you remember that trauma, because maybe you saw someone who's wearing the same shirt, or maybe you saw something that smelt the same, or maybe you saw something or heard something, some word or some name that recreated that energy in your body and your mind, and all of a sudden you're there again. But you're not actually there physically. Your mind is playing tricks on you. Your mind is repeating that incident over and over and over again, like automaton does, and it just repeats it over and over again, not realizing that every single time it repeats that incident in your mind, that your body's affected by it as well, right? So it's just a memory at this point in time. It's a memory that happened to you from a long time ago, a painful memory, a very terrible memory, but it's something that happened to you in the past. But right now, in this moment in time, you're sitting there and recreating it. The trauma itself is over. The incident itself is done and over with. But you're sitting there recreating it through the power of your mind. And that's what we do to ourselves, right? That's how we, I don't know if I should say torture ourselves, but we make ourselves suffer, or I don't know what it is exactly. Like maybe we're afraid that we're going to forget, or maybe it's just that our body reminds us, or our mind reminds us, or something reminds us. And instead of being like, all right, it happened in the past, and I'm in this moment in time, I'm safe. Like that, nothing is happening right now. I'm sitting in my room. There's no one around me. There's nothing happening. I'm safe. Right? Obviously, if you're just sitting here watching the video or doing whatever you're doing, reading a book, there's nothing actually happening physically that's causing the trauma again. But it's your mind that's recreating it. Now, this is what the psychologist said, and I thought it was so interesting because, yet again, it's the power of the mind. Over and over again, I am reminded of the fact that everything that we do to ourselves. Yeah, it's not like we're actually going through the same thing over and over again, but we create stories in our head. We make up all of these things in our head that torture us over and over again, right? And so that thing that happened to you 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years is still ruling you because you can't get over it. It happened 50 years ago, but you're still holding on to it and you're roaming around with it, not letting it go, because over and over again, you've replayed in your head. And what happens, as you might have read in newspapers or in journals, what happens when we replay these incidents in our head, every single time we replay the incident, it changes a little bit. Because our memory is not solid, it's not perfect. And we replay it, and then the incident changes a little bit. So instead of having blue socks, now they're orange socks. And then we replay it again, and now it changes a little bit more again. So now the person, instead of being a man who's 30 years old, now he's 26. So like little things, little by little change, that over time, over 15, 20 years, your memory is completely shoddy. What you remembered of that incident is completely gone. You don't actually really even remember the incident. You remember some story that you've made up, but it's actually not the truth. And that's in general as well. And like if you go through witness incidents or witness testimonies, even if you ask a person 15 minutes after what happened, if you ask 5 different people will have 5 different answers, because we don't have a good memory. We don't remember things accurately. We make up stories, we add in things if there's things missing. And so even if you can't remember 15 minutes after what actually happened in an incident, then 20 years later, or even a few years later, or a few months later, your memory of the incident is going to be completely convoluted by your own experiences, by the stories that you tell yourself, by whatever you're trying to do to yourself, right? And so all of this to say that I'm not saying that I'm trying to completely negate trauma. Obviously, there is a lot to it. But I'm also trying to remind you that if you're in the moment and you are feeling that panic come up because you're, in that moment where you're like, oh my God, I remember that thing that happened to me. I can't believe it. Remember that that thing has happened to you already in the past. It's not happening to you right now. It's already happened. It's done and over with. It happened 20 years ago. And right now you're safe. You're physically safe right now. Mentally, maybe you're not safe. But physically right now, you're sitting in your room and you're safe. And if you can just remind yourself that you are safe in this moment in time, at least physically, then at least you can start being like, all right, cool, yeah, nothing's happening. I'm safe. Everyone, there's no one around me. I'm okay. Everything's okay. And little by little, if you start reminding yourself of that, you can get over, like at least getting over the panic of, oh my God, I'm in a traumatic situation. At least you can be like, no, actually, I'm fine. Everything's okay. I'm physically okay. And then if you're physically able to stay calm, then mentally at least you can stay calm as well. And then you can start unraveling the trauma little by little, because you're actually staying calm through the process of it rather than panicking every single time, which is what we end up doing. Is we start panicking, we start getting angry, we start pulling emotions into it, and therefore we're never able to get over it. We just hold on to it forever and ever and ever and ever, never ever able to let it go. Now, of course, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not an expert on trauma. I'm not an expert on anything. So if this doesn't resonate with you, just ignore it. But this is just something that I heard that I thought was so beautiful and so poignant to me, at least. I thought it was, wow, yeah, exactly. I'm doing this to myself. It's not like it's happening over and over again. In this moment in time, I'm physically safe, and that really helped me. So I wanted to share this with you. Again, if it doesn't resonate with you, just ignore it. Because, of course, not every idea is going to resonate with every single person. And also, this is not a way to negate or to get over the trauma. It's to realize that at least in the moment in time, you're physically safe. So at least you can calm yourself down and realize that, okay, I'm fine, I'm safe. And that safety itself is a big gift that this idea can give you, because in most cases, a lot of trauma victims do not feel safe. That's the primary thing about it, right? They don't feel safe, and that's why they don't do anything, or they don't go out with anyone, or things like that. So I hope this makes sense. Again, if you have questions, let me know. But again, I'm not an expert, and I don't remember where I heard it from. I hear a lot of random things, and I kind of hold it in my head. But I'm sure if you research trauma, you'll be able to figure out more about this. Again, thank you so much for listening. I'm so grateful, and I shall see you the next time around. Bye for now.